So from the White House to Capitol Hill now, and the race to get a budget bill passed before the money cuts off Friday at 12 a.m. Eastern, to be specific. House Republicans kicking the can down the road with a 99-page continuing resolution that would fund the government this time through the end of September. Now, that resolution includes an increase in defense spending by $7 billion, about $6 billion for veterans' health. President Trump took to social media to push for what he calls a very good funding bill, urging all Republicans vote yes. House Democrats, meanwhile, pushing for no votes. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats cannot back a measure that rips away life-sustaining health care and retirement benefits from everyday Americans. Jeffries sees the Republican bill as what he calls a scheme to pay for massive tax cuts for their wealthy donors like Elon Musk. Medicaid is our red line. Those are direct quotes from Mr. Jeffries. So the clock is running and the deadline is Friday. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small joins us on a Monday. And Taurean, Democrats' resistance to this thing is going to really rip away. They say that this bill is really going to rip away health care from millions of Americans. The president says it won't. So what's the truth?
Well, the truth here is that Democrats are pointing to the fact that this continuing resolution, especially under the guise of around $13 billion in non-defense spending, wouldn't allow Democrats to have any leverage in advocating for the protection of some of those safety net services like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Now, I should say that that's not a part of a continuing resolution. Those are mandatory spending that does not have to get annual approval, but this is the argument that Democrats are making, especially as the likes of Elon Musk and the Department of Government and Efficiency are taking a look at some of those safety net programs and weeding out what they're calling fraud, but at what Democrats are seeing as excuses to further chip away at funding for those very vital programs. At the heart of this, though, is the struggle over whether or not to decrease spending below 2024 levels, which is the case that Speaker Johnson is looking to make as he's seeking the full support of the Republican conference to get this across the finish line.
Yeah, but does Johnson have the votes? As he starts to look at heads and head count, what's his confidence level?
It's unclear at the moment, but we know from the Republican congressman from Kentucky, Thomas Massie, he is at least the first no vote. Republican senator also from Kentucky, Rand Paul, also came out saying that he can't support it as it is. Their problem is these cuts aren't deep enough. The interesting thing about this is in the past, we've seen Republicans work across the aisle to pass these stopgap measures. Democrats aren't on board for this. They're saying either go back to 2024 spending levels or else we're off the table. So you guys will fight it out on your own, and this will be your fault if it doesn't pass. Republicans, though, are saying preemptively that if a government shutdown happens, it'll be solely because of Democrats not willing to come to the table.
So let's play this out. What happens if Democrats and Republicans can't come to an agreement on this and the votes don't end up with the bill being passed?
Yeah, worst case scenario, we see a government shutdown, forcing quite a few services to either stop operating as normal or to be completely shuttered until Congress can pass a bill. That also means quite a few, many I should say, federal workers would be advised not to show up to work as they won't be receiving paychecks unless they're considered an essential worker. Then they will have to come to work but also forego a paycheck. I should also mention, though, that retroactively, once a bill is signed into law, they will receive that pay. But we've seen before, especially with services like TSA agents, a mass sick out happens where this eventually passes on to Americans. Slower or longer lines to get to the airport, slower lines to get through security, stuff like that. General nuisances that the American people don't want to see. Realistically, what could happen, though, based off the past, is if this fails, if there aren't enough Republicans to vote this through down party lines, Republicans will circle back to Democrats, see another stopgap bill like they did before. and it will be same funding levels as 2024. It'd be a short-term loss for Republicans, but in the grand scheme of things, keeping the government open so they could negotiate longer on this budget reconciliation deal that would codify some of the cuts being made under the Department of Government Efficiency for the fiscal year 2026 is a long-term goal that Speaker Johnson is willing to gamble with, as we've seen him do that before in the past.
All right, we know you have your eyes on it. Taurean Small, great to talk to you on a Monday, my friend.